we've sort of lost this culture in the UK of being hospitable to each other. And sadly, I think some of that's down to just the fact that just in modern times, we've seen a bit of a breakdown in the family in the UK, definitely. In bigger cities, it's much easier to be isolated. There's less sense of community. And I think actually there's such a need now for people to have community, to have hospitality, to share with each other. And I think the more that we can learn to do that, especially when you're in a big city, I think that just is going to go such a long way.
This is the Wisdom Stories. I'm Christy Adams, and I'm here today with Fabio D'andrea, who is Italian. Mm-hmm. I know you're a Brit, but I mean, for me, the whole thing about Italians is they're so fabulous at hospitality. I've lived near them and next door to them for years, and they've done gorgeous lasagnas and amazing things. Tell me, what does your culture know about hospitality?
I guess, as you say, I'm half Italian, half English. So growing up in the UK, I was quite used to my father, in particular, who's Italian, making lots of food. My grandmother would do. There's always big gatherings, so it's quite normal. But I think my real experience of true Italian hospitality happened when I was about 9. I went to my first Italian wedding in Rome. It's one of my dad's cousins, and I'll never forget that. I think we had a 13-course meal, and there was food afterwards as well, and food before. The same thing happened with my brother, actually. He had what we would call a slightly low-key Italian wedding, and we had a lot of our friends fly out to Sicily for that. And there was this massive buffet before the evening meal, and all of his friends started picking out, and they were like, "This is amazing." We kept saying to them, "This is just like appetizers. There's a lot more coming."
Pace yourself.
Yeah, I mean, we only decided to have 4 courses, so we reduced it from the typical sort of 10 or 9, 10 or 11. But yeah, it's quite an eye-opener going to an Italian wedding, that's for sure.
And how does that, that sense of, well, it's generosity, isn't it, and hospitality work out in the film industry? So for you, being filmmaking and a musician, what does that look like?
Well, I think there is something inbred in the Italian culture that you want to make sure people are well fed. So when I'm at the studio or on a film set, I think my priority is always making sure that there's provision for crew. And I think the crew can get sometimes overlooked. Recently I had a small film shoot going on, but I just said to this cafe, please just let there be an open tab, let anybody just go and help themselves, because it's quite hard. We have a busy schedule and you can't really look after everybody. So I just think people work better when they're happy and well fed. So,
and everyone's going to want to work for you now, aren't they?
Maybe.
That'll be a new USP for you. And what about courtesy in terms of how you deal with people? It can get quite heated, can't it, on the film sets?
Oh, that's a really good question. So without saying too much, I did, early on in my career, filmmaking career, I experienced a film shoot with some very famous actors, directors, camera crew. And
do you mean diva when you say that? Divas?
Well, yeah, not from the actors, but just arguments burst out between the director and crew, and I found it really petty, and it was quite an eye-opener to me. And I realised, actually, then speaking to a lot of people in the industry, that could be quite common, which I think is a real shame, because I think if you're working with big groups of people, there's no room for divas and attitude. And actually, creating a film in the same way that you would create a piece of music, commercial music for release, all these creative endeavors really rely on teamwork. There's not really a hierarchy. It's not that the director's the most important. Every single person's important. And if, say, for example, somebody lower down the chain is not doing their job, it could ruin everything. So everybody is important. And to get the best out of people, I think people need to be treated with equality and respect, and actually simple things like making sure that people are fed well and that you thought about that really makes a huge difference. And just being nice to everybody, expecting people just to be nice back, even if they're having a bad day, it's okay. You can make them feel that, okay, you can forget about your problems right now. Let's just all come together and let's work towards creating this thing that we're making.
And does your faith affect how you lead and work in your music and what inspires you? And
massively. I think it's very easy for us to forget that we're all placed in our industries and sectors for a reason, and we have to be a light in this world wherever we're placed. So our whole lives have to reflect kingdom principles and reflect Jesus. So for me, it really is the same actually whether I'm working or whether I'm out with friends or in church. It's got to be the same. If there's no reality there and we're not treating people the same, then I think there's something off skew.
Yeah. So do you have a story of when someone's been really generous to you and it's made a real difference to your life?
Yeah, well, I've travelled a lot and I love travelling, so I've been very fortunate to go to many different cultures and countries and experience many different cultures. And I think the times where I've been touched the most by people's hospitality is actually where I've been in very poor countries and people have done as much as they could for me and for the people I'm with. When I was very young, I remember going to Brazil, and I stayed in Niterói near Rio, and then went to visit some favelas. And just again, the hospitality from the people there, where they were going out of their way to look after myself, my friend who travelled with me, was incredible, considering that these people had very, very little. Likewise, I've seen the flip side of that. I remember once going on a cycle ride around India, and I was actually filming this event. We were raising money for an orphanage, and we came to a village, and the village, there's a big house in the middle, and they put on a banquet for everybody. But outside around the village, there was just all these tents, and that's where all the workers lived. And I felt so uncomfortable in that situation where we were being treated like royalty, but then there were people there who had nothing. And when I turned around to somebody and said, but what about all these people? And they were like, oh, that's their lot in life. That made me actually feel really uncomfortable as well. So it's a really interesting one when we talk about hospitality and courtesy, because I think it's really easy for us to forget those in need as well around us. So sometimes we can focus just on our immediate friends and just treating them well, and that's easy to do because we're going to do that naturally and with ease. But how do we do that to people who need it?
Yeah. Do you have, after travelling so much in so many different cultures, have you seen anyone sort of demonstrate real mercy towards others, or do you have any stories where?
Yeah, I mean, I was thinking about this last night, and actually, I think in some respects, we in the UK have we kind of need to be a bit more merciful with ourselves, because when we talk about politeness and hospitality, we have this culture where we sort of appear to be very polite on the surface. I mean, I'll catch myself walking down the road, I'll bump into somebody, and I'll say sorry, they'll say sorry back to it. You know, that's a British thing. We apologise a lot, but actually when you think about it, it's very surface level. That's sort of part of our culture. But when it comes to it, we can be quite selfish, I think. And we have this sort of hidden layer, and we've almost become too apologetic. It's become part of our culture here to apologise for everything when we don't really mean it, and then to not apologise for things that we actually should apologise for. And again, I think we're sort of apologetic about our own culture, whereas actually eating is part of what we have to do to live. So being hospitable is actually just reaching out to somebody and saying, you know, this is our necessity. Let's enjoy this together. I'm going to actually help you live. That's really what hospitality is. So we've sort of lost this culture in the UK of being hospitable to each other. And sadly, I think some of that's down to just the fact that just in modern times, we've seen a bit of a breakdown in the family in the UK, definitely. In bigger cities, it's much easier to be isolated. There's less sense of community. And I think in many other cultures, they just still have more of that sense of community because they've just not evolved so much. And it's a big city issue, especially. And in a place like London, you really see that. And I think in some ways we have to try and learn to be merciful towards ourselves and realize that we're living in a society now that doesn't allow for us to be as hospitable as our ancestors would have been, especially in the UK. And I think actually there's such a need now for people to have community, to have hospitality, to share with each other. And I think the more that we can learn to do that, especially when you're in a big city, I think that just is going to go such a long way.
I was when I was doing my degree, when I was 27, I met a university lecturer who lived in the same part of the town that I lived in. And I had done a project where I'd photographed the front doors of people's houses with their numbers. And then I did it 7 years later, and then I did it 7 years later, and then I did it a further 7 years later. And so I had this catalogue of black and white photographs of people and the changes in the people who were living in the houses. But when I first started the project, he said to me, "It's very unusual, I don't talk to any of my neighbours." So I said, "Why is that?" And he said, "I don't know, I go out to work, I come back, I get my shopping, I have my food, I have my people who live in my house, but I don't talk to anyone else." And he said, "How come you talk to all the other people in your neighbourhood?" So I said, "Well, that's what makes community. It's just simple. It doesn't cost anything, does it? And actually, hospitality could be a glass of water and a warm smile and a conversation. So it's
sometimes a friendly face, I think, goes a long way.
A friendly face goes a long way.
I was reading something the other day about somebody from the north who was coming down to London, and he said he found it really weird how he would say hello to people normally, and then on the tube everybody would look at him like, "Why are you talking to me?" And actually it reminded me of a friend that I used to have. He no longer lives in the UK, but he's a Londoner born and bred. He just had this magic ability just to start conversations on the tube, and people would just warm to him. But I always used to like it because I would just watch him having these conversations, and I thought, you've just made somebody's day a little bit brighter, a little bit more fun. So yeah, we can all have little effects on people, and those little effects will come together and make something different. So I think
really important, isn't it? The small acts of kindness actually make a massive difference.
That's it. And I think sometimes it is the small things that we do that can have such a big impact on somebody, and because they're small, we don't see them. I just think of like these people that are out in Charing Cross every Friday night giving food to the homeless. That might just become sort of an ordinary thing for them. This is what they do, but you know, they're making a big difference in somebody's lives. Similarly to like the music teacher who's there week on, week out with the kid who doesn't want to learn, but they're helping them. They're encouraging them, even if the child is not going to grow up to become a musician. You know, they'll look back at what they were doing, and you know, somebody was there actually helping them with their education, and there would have been something positive that they would have learnt from that. And I think it's like I said, it's the little things that really mean a lot in the end.
It's interesting you say that, because in Gallows Primary School in London, they ensure that every single pupil learns the violin. And in addition to that, each member of the staff chooses a musical instrument to play, because they believe that the connectivity that happens in the brain affects all the subjects that you learn. So actually music is incredibly important, isn't it? It
really is, especially for education. I mean, there's plenty of studies about this, but because the way you learn an instrument, and then you're also learning to read music, you're learning another language, and the written form of it engages the brain in multiple ways. So I can only speak for my own education, but growing up, all the children that studied music and played instruments, we were always the ones more advanced academically, only because I think we'd had that foundation from the musical studies we did. Yeah.
What a wonderful way to end. Thank you so much.
Thank you.